Hello everyone, today a very interesting video awaits you. I would like to ask you to support this video by liking and subscribing to the channel. Enjoy watching everyone. A boy is sitting on the sofa and playing mobile games. It has many phones working at the same time. Funsaya thinks he is the game emperor. But during the game he crossed the line. Something happened and his body began to disintegrate into tiny pixels. The phone fell out of his hands. This dimension is very insidious. Funsaya was attacked by some bugs. There were a lot of them and they were all the size of a fist. The boy got scared and started to run away. However, he was stopped by a man with white, long hair and golden eyes. He came as close as possible to the young man's face and greeted him. The new universe is full of threats, intrigues and dangers. Funsaya is the main character who crossed the border between the worlds. He stood and looked at his hand, on which the electrified ball had landed. It was small in size and glowed all the time. There were many such balls near him. But he looked at only one with admiration. His abilities are too strong. The boy instantly hit the ground with this layer and everything that was nearby flew in different directions. Funsaya has the ability to take away opponents' skills. The young man is delighted with this turn of events. His hand glows and emits small bolts of lightning. Now this power belongs to him. In front of Funsaya, a supernatural man appeared. He was completely white in color and his eyes were glowing. The dimensions were so gigantic that it is impossible to convey in words. He seemed to be burning with white fire. The boy stood in front of him, not understanding why he, a mere mortal, had to struggle with such things. His jacket and hair were billowing from the strong wind, and his hands were balled into fists. Gathering himself, he exhaled, with thoughts that there was no choice, he would have to fight this horror. Funsaya was ready to fight. Without delay, the misty cloud soldier started the battle and pounced on the boy. There was no end to his rage. Of course, because it is an illusion of the Kailuan realm. The young man, already having magical abilities, confidently stretched out his hand, gathering all his strength into it. On his face you can see the pleasure of what is happening. He is sure that this will calm the white soldier. Shock! Funsaya suddenly attacked the monster. Without even touching him, the boy's powers neutralized the threat. In an instant, the misty cloudy soldier was surrounded by strange, blue sparks, which quickly destroyed him. Before he could even move, he turned, as it were, into a snowball. Funsaya reached out to the bright ball and stared at it in shock. For a while, he just thought about the fact that a layer had really formed, from which blue rays were constantly disappearing and then appearing. He squeezed this ball in his fist and it popped. This sphere contained the power of the foggy cloud soldier, which currently enveloped the boy. After that, he felt changes in himself, his strength increased. The young man heard a very familiar voice. He was surprised to be told that he had dealt with this misty cloud soldier, and was then asked if the caretaker had sent him here. The boy angrily replied that the elder was wrong. He doesn't know any caretakers and just came here. It was the same person with white hair, the god Kimaru. He angrily shouted at Funsaya and ordered him not to talk nonsense. Calming down a little, he said that the spirit of the abandoned valley had not yet discovered it. He then asked questions like how did he get here if he doesn't know the caretaker. The boy did not answer at all. God became even more angry and asked for a clear explanation as to why he was here. The man was not joking. Raising his hand, he created two huge cloud soldier-like warriors. After that, I asked several questions about his name, surname and origin. Funsaya smiled sweetly and lightly replied that even if he revealed his identity, it was unlikely that Kimura would believe him. Despite this, he decided to tell about himself. His name is Funsaya, a popular mobile strategy game player, also known as the Liver Emperor. It relies on electricity production, has tens of thousands of fans and a monthly income of more than 100 yuan. He also added that his career is flourishing, but this was a big mistake. He was careless while playing one mobile game. Someone woke him up. He found himself in a forest unknown to him, glad that at least he had shoes on. Strange bugs came down from the trees. They looked unfriendly and most likely were not happy about Funsaya's presence. That's when he started running away from the place where dozens of large spiders were attacking him. I thought at that moment only that he is strong and fit, liver from head to toe, and 50 m in 12 seconds is the best result in history. But he still got caught. Spiders surrounded the boy. It is probably impossible to avoid the claws of monsters at the age of 18. Amazingly, will he die from the claws of little spiders while trying to create a male hero character? Having quickly picked himself up, he got out of the spider trap. Many bullet-shaped flashlights appeared around him. Each of them had its own special color. Funsaya began to guess what it was. Looking at one of the balls that landed on his hand, he understood, different properties of light groups have different effects. The light poison made it possible to easily get rid of the heat that he had. And using one of the lights, called Essence of Cheerfulness, his body became stronger. He felt an incredible rush of energy and strength. Fortunately, this world has a conscience, so Funsaya managed to knock back the enemies with a simple attribute of light. When the light went out, the spiders did not retreat, only began to attack him more and more, jumping. He felt it. Quickly gathering himself, he ran without noticing anything around him. Thanks to the light, Speed successfully broke the record for the 50 m run. Are those spiders still following him? If they're going to chase him, he. But here, not understanding what was happening, Funsaya stopped his story. Because a very thick fog appeared around him. The older man rose up, his hair and all his clothes were also lifted. The boy stood and looked at him in confusion. And so the man told him that the work of the ancestors' life was almost destroyed by this act. Wiping the sweat from his forehead with his hand, the boy informed the elder that he had just trampled a few spiders, which could be important here. An enraged Kimura yelled at him if he even understood how much those spiders meant. His ancestor did not see meat for 3,000 years. He just wants to fry spiders and eat them. He lost 50 years to this nest of black jade spiders. Funsaya wanted to calm the elder, but it did not work. The boy's face was covered with sweat and he was very worried about his act. 2 cloud soldiers, led by Kimura, hit the young man until he flew away. His thoughts were full. He met this amazing person. He does not know at all how he got here, in a dream, but he knows one thing for sure, he was beaten here without explanation. Despite the heavy blow, he landed like a superhuman. Absorbing the cloud soldier's light, he began to feel that his attack was less damaging to Funsaya. The same principle. The warriors, without delay, are ready to strike, again. Standing bravely, the young man thought that facing 2 cloud soldiers, he must fight. When he got into a defensive position, he was enveloped by all the power that had accumulated in him. And then, with the words that his name is Funsaya, he attacked the soldiers. The monsters disappeared. Only the surprised and at the same time angry Kimura remained. He stared at him silently with his piercing gaze. The happy boy stood rejoicing in his victory. However, in reality, he was in a panic, not knowing how the elder would react. The man was delighted. He had a plan. He liked the young man gifted with strength and spiritual energy. It would be nice to give it to the ancestor. Kimura now had a large skull, huge rib bones and arms. In such a terrifying manner, he ordered the boy to leave the place immediately in search of revenge. But Funsaya, I was very confused, so I didn't know where to go. Apart from him, no one can see the light. Approaching the boy as close as possible, the elder said that the ancestor thinks his spiritual energy is different from ordinary people. And God wants to give world-class knowledge to the young man. Doesn't Funsaya want to be his successor? Hearing such incredible news, the boy was over the moon with happiness. He thought that this was a systematic approach. After passing the exam, the heavenly person will gild it. And according to the general story of the game, he can dominate the alien world by learning unique skills. The elder, with a sly smile, told the conditions, that the unique name of this teaching is 3 Floating Dreams. Once the cultivation is complete, the soul becomes indestructible, dreams come true, reality can be distorted and the body regenerated. Funsaya was even more delighted. His eyes burned with desire to learn it right now. And Kimura agreed to teach. The ancestor should teach the boy the teachings of 3 Floating Dreams, and he thought to himself that this child is really easy to deceive. His intentions were not simple. The man touched the young man's forehead and told him that he would now send him to sleep, and he would wake up as soon as he learned everything. A bright mark appeared on Funsaya's forehead and he fell asleep. In a dream, he got into another dimension. At first I thought it was a fairy tale world. However, it was dark there and he was falling between colored cards with different inscriptions. Thinking that maybe these cards were the same as the attribute of light, he touched one of them. His hand was burning with magical fire, but he was silently gazing at her. He was probably wondering what would happen next. At this time, Kimura was still standing, but now with some kind of card in his hands and was thinking about the fact that the ancestor had made a total of 12 mistakes in the teaching of the 3 Floating Dreams. He thought that the boy's soul must be caught in the unfinished practice and he would be able to overcome him. But here, unexpectedly for the elder, the boy coughed because he woke up. The card flew out of the god's hands and he looked at the young man. Funsaya raised his head and with a big smile on his face, said to the elder that he understood everything. Confused, Kimura looked at him and was confused as to what he could understand. Therefore, I asked a counter-question about it. Standing up, the boy said that the 3 Floating Dreams had a total of 12 difficult levels, and after each level, the power of the magic power increased. 12 magical powers can open the way to becoming a celestial. However, God could not believe this because the 3 Floating Dreams were created by the ancestor and Kimura divided it into 9 levels. He does not think that this child could understand everything. Maybe the guy just wants to deceive him. So he decided to check it out. If Funsaya was able to understand everything by himself, the ancestor would enter the special purple space between his eyebrows to check it out. The young man easily agreed. After ordering the boy to close his eyes, the elder touched the mark and it lit up. They really got into some purple world. It consisted of many cubes. The boy couldn't wait to find out how he would be tested. The man thought that such purple spaces were rare for mortals. Then where does this young man have such spiritual energy? Was he really able to understand everything? Hoping to test Funsaya in this way, the elder reached out and offered to show him what he had learned. Let him attack the ancestor. But the boy does not know if he can do it, because he is not sure that he knows how to control this very power. The elder reassures the boy, because his body is not quite ordinary, but is partially composed of the original spirit, but this incarnation, compared to the Daotai realm, is in the 8th heaven. Especially since this is just a mortal, gifted with divine power. There is nothing to worry about. Stretching his hand up above Fansaya, a green flower, avatar, formed of incredible size. Kimaru was very surprised by this. The boy crossed his arms and let out a loud cry as he sent this force down to the ground, causing a giant explosion. Then he took a deep breath and exhaled. He calmed down. He was completely relaxed and not thinking about anything. Then he quickly jumped up and announced that this is the skill he learned. But God was not around. When he came to his senses and looked around, he saw only a pile of smoke after the explosion. And even there he did not find an elder. And so, he quietly crept up to the boy, but his thoughts were only that the avatar, which had just been destroyed, would have to be restored for decades. You may even have to use a new avatar. He wanted to explore the full power of Fansaya as soon as possible. The boy looked around and saw the older man, but he had no time for chatter. He said that his punch was too weak, now he must use all his power at once. Fansaya picked up on the idea. In an instant the young man was moved and thought that the elder was really a good-hearted man, and indeed he was leading him step by step. The guy wants to live up to expectations. But Kimaru did not like such an emotion. Fansaya gathered all the strength he could into his fist. It glowed and sparkled, and the boy informed the elder about the strongest blow. After that, he released all the energy from himself and was ready to deliver the strongest blow. A man stood next to him with his mouth open. He did not expect to see this. And explosion. Powerful and destructive, it cut through the air with deafening thunder. The entire space was filled with red smoke. When the dust settled a little, the boy was again in search of his mentor. If he was able to avoid this, then he deserves to be called an elder. Kimaru was standing behind him, extending his hand to the young man. He was very scared. That's all. Ancestor can only win by force. The elder's hand came closer to Fansaya, some rays of power came out of it, which seemed to pass into the middle of the head. God looked worriedly at the boy and did not understand what was happening. It is unlikely that he underwent refinement. Then why is the incarnation of the spirit of the ancestor absorbed as spiritual energy? Bright light poured from the man's eyes and mouth. Maybe this is spiritual self-improvement? The boy turned around, feeling as if the elder had flared up again behind him. However, what he saw surprised him a little. From this adult, angry and courageous man, he turned into a small and cute baby. He stood silently, frowning. Fansaya picked up little Kimaru in his arms and looked at him with delight. Then he asked why the elder became like that. But he answered this question mentally, because it was the boy's fault. Here the spell disappeared and they ended up in the same forest where it all started. Kimaru began to understand that the loss of 3 avatars at once contributed to a sharp decrease in strength. He didn't like the fact that he was forced to leave the purple space, so the illusion also dispelled. Of course, Fansaya was interested in whether he had passed the trial test, but the elder was tired of sitting on his arms. Yes, that's how he passed the test, and he also dropped the mentor to the ground, because hugs for 2 grown men are disgusting. The boy decided to appease the older man, because he likes barefoot girls, with curvaceous forms and long hair. Kimaru thinks this is a vulgar generation. Fansaya used his powers again and created an avatar, then asked the elder to judge how strong his technique was, but the man was quite angry and told him not to be a foolish child. While they were talking, something appeared behind them. At that time, the boy did not yet know that the practice of 3 floating dreams had an extremely strong effect on spiritual beings. Eventually, the men heard a sound behind them, so they turned around together. What Fansaya saw made him fall in love at first sight. Smoke was coming out of his nose and ears, and hearts were twinkling in his eyes. It was a magical spiritual being in the form of a young girl, Azu. She had long dark hair, and the lines of her body were pleasantly smooth. The young man was very happy that the girl appeared. And Kimaru stood and did not understand the fact that he spent 3,000 years on the ancient land, which was abandoned by God, and for the first time he sees how a monster has become a humanoid. The boy dreamed. He fell in love with Azu and hoped to meet his first love. He was approaching the creature on the wings of love. However, at one point, bang! The girl did not like such a greeting, so she just hit him as hard as possible. Fansaya was also displeased with this behavior, so he decided to tell the girl that she has a pitiful character. Hearing this, the spiritual creature immediately pounced on the men with the words that she wanted to kill them. The boy was not jokingly scared. He released his powers and created a new avatar, then asked Azu not to make him do it. The girl stopped. At first, she was worried and felt like she was confused. She saw only silhouettes, a boy and a man, and inside them, a bright blue glow. They were very strong for her. She mustered all her strength, and then, in an instant, released the entire sheet from the web. It was everywhere. Men did not understand this gift. Fansaya thought she was Spider-Man, but Kimaru guessed something. Azu turned and ran away, deep into the forest, saying that she would return when she was stronger. And the young man and the elder stood, not understanding what was happening. Why she runs away, maybe because of the capture of the nest of spiders, or it is an instinct to run away from an enemy that is stronger than you. Unexpectedly for everyone, the ground began to shake, every stone jumped. What could it be? A sudden situation again. The elder knows. He is ready. This ancient land starts from the beginning. Some mountain split in half, and a magic circle came out of it, which left behind a plume. Indeed, this circle turned out to be a portal. 3 people came out of it. Immediately upon exiting, they asked if this was the ancient land. Looking back, they were very happy. Everything worked out for them. They got there and were on their way. One of the commanders-in-chief shouted that the ancient books did not lie, that every 3,600 years an entrance to the ancient land was opened. They had an opportunity to revive the Qianchu Valley. Fansaya and Kimaru were quite far from the mountain, but they could see the smoke coming from there. The elder realized that some people had set foot on the ancient land. The young man suggested that it might be treasure hunters or something like that. The man was fed up with the kid's stupid ideas, so he asked if there was any spiritual being who would want to search for treasure in this isolated place. What heavenly or earthly treasures? Of the living creatures here, the only black jade spiders. The elder caught several of these spiders and fried them. He said that he had not touched meat for 3,000 years, and today he was extremely lucky. He was very happy. But there was a guy standing next to him. He had a displeased face and asked if the man was sure he wanted to eat this. Kimaru, with anger in his eyes, ordered not to judge the appearance, because the taste itself is of the highest quality, and after frying, the same as a crab from the eastern seas. The guy had nowhere to go, so he just wondered if there really are people who really like such things. Half an hour later, Fansaya already felt those spiders on both cheeks. Therefore, he decided to show his gratitude to the elder, because it is really delicious. And the elder only said that he does not know how to deceive. They still had quite a few fried spiders. The boy dared to ask a question that had been bothering him for quite some time. If the ancient land is so desolate, then why should the elder not leave it with him? Before he could say anything, something grabbed the chopsticks from their hands and whispered that he would not be able to leave. Kimaru was very scared for his lunch. But it was only Azu. With the help of her web, she grabbed a piece for herself. Funsaya asked her if she said she would come back when she was stronger. However, she came back too quickly. She doesn't play by the rules. But the man had no idea how she snatched the ancestors' food. Apparently she couldn't wait to die. Kimaru just exploded with anger. He lunged at Azu and the boy ran after him to stop him. Funsaya held the elder's mouth closed with his hand and shouted to the girl what she meant when she said that the ancestor would not be able to leave this place. However, she just chewed spiders. Azu eventually replied that it was sealed here. And only the one who sealed it, or someone stronger than that man, can release it. The boy listened to her intently and thought that it seemed that this must be a very respectable person. The young man had a plan in his head. She said that one had to become a celestial to save the ancestor, so he asked Kimaru how one could become a celestial. But the one with a stout pike shouted whether he even knew what he was talking about. And Kimaru began the story that the peak period of the ancestor was the kingdom of Shunxiao, in the third heaven, which is 1,000 miles away from Chenshin. Funsaya didn't know what kind of kingdom it was, so he asked about it. The elder was outraged by the fact that he does not know elementary things, and also wants to become a celestial. Therefore, he decided to explain that spirituality is divided into 8 spheres. They become more difficult with each level. You can count on your fingers the people who were able to reach the heavenly bridge. The boy was surprised by the strength of the elder, because he reached the spiritual bridge. But Kimaru tilted his head and said no. Unfortunately, the ancestor did not reach him. But after several waves of despair, he returned to him with a loud laugh. He is super strong, so no one can match him. Azu was quick to upset him because it's all in the past and now he's trapped and there's nothing he can do about it. These words struck him in his very heart. It was painful to listen to such crazy things. But Funsaya, taking him in his arms, reassured him and asked him not to be upset. After all, Kimaru helped him a lot and he wants, and even has, to thank him twice. He will be able to reach the level of a celestial. Just let them block the account of the Emperor of the Liver and he will save his elder. The man looked at him hopelessly, and the girl snorted and said that both of them could only brag. And then, with all her might, she poked at them with a stick. The men were shocked by such behavior and did not expect such actions at all. They dodged sharply and the stick flew past them. At the same time, the people who got here were on their way somewhere. The girl Dinara, her mentor brother Hanji and their brother Manuli were talking among themselves. The sister sneered at Hanji, saying that if he was given the chance to enter the ancient land, he would definitely reach the Kai Luan realm this round. The younger man noticed that her behavior had changed somewhat. But the mentor was not interested in this offer. His main goal for this trip is the future of the Qianqiu Valley. And then a pointed stick flew at him. He stopped her right in front of his face. Everyone around panicked. Was it a hidden weapon? But no, Hanji noticed that it looked like a bamboo stick. They reached the bonfire of Funsaya, Kimaru and Azu. God laughed that one of the people wanted to enter the Kai Luan realm. What, in the Forgotten Land, can be a hidden weapon? And the boy was surprised, because these gentlemen came from outside. Hanji didn't understand why there were already people in the ancient land. Where did they come from, and how was that possible? His sister quickly took out a sword and warned her mentor brother that the girl in this group was an evil Bayuzan. This sword began to glow with fire. She swung them and pointed at Azu, saying to her, "Is she a brave demon? Did she dare to insult her brother?" Let him die by her hand. The boy shouted for his sister to be careful, but the sword went through the girl, because she is a spiritual creature of this forest. The man took a defensive stance, and Dinara shouted for everyone to be careful. Because this evil Bayuzan activates its abilities. Azu created spiders and directed them all at humans, saying that her name is Azu, not evil. Funsaya was shocked at what he saw. He understood that the spiders they had just eaten. And the elder added that he also drank the water she used to wash herself. The sister noticed that the girl had already reached the level of Kai Luan. Hanji warned not to worry. He has his own way, so he took out a flaming sword. The pointed end of the sword was aimed directly at Azu with her spiders. She smiled sweetly and didn't even think to worry. Dinara supported her brother and shouted at him to kill this evil. The younger brother, who was standing next to him, was unsure of her choice. When the sword was already close to the creature, she easily slipped out. She also asked if he would let her see what he was capable of. Turning around, she saw that the sword was a millimeter away from Funsaya's head. Everyone stopped and was silent for a few minutes. But then Hanji turned to Azu, still holding his sword by the boy's head, and asked her a provocative question like, "Does she want him to harm her human? If not, then let her obediently do everything he tells her." The husband's brother and sister were very happy. He is deservedly called a mentor brother. Manages the situation very easily. Let the evil spirit bow its head. Hanji apologized to Azu and said that his method wasn't perfect, but the ancient land was connected to his luck in the life of Qianchu Valley, so he made this decision. The girl was moved and thought that she could explain a little about who she is. After all, she really is not an evil Bayuzan. And more. The man interrupted her with his angry cry, not letting her say a word. He believed that there was no need to strain to understand who she was. Her appearance, clothes and techniques reveal her personality. Immediately someone shouted for everyone to stop. It was Funsaya. He asked his brother to allow him to say something at the beginning. He said that he didn't know what kind of evil Bayuzan was and what Hanji's insults were. However, he knew one thing for sure: he did not like it when a sword was pointed at him. And with one light movement of his fingers, he crushed the saber into small pieces. The man was sweating profusely and worried, because he did not understand how the boy, with one movement of his fingers, destroyed his trophy. And at the same moment, Funsaya pushed Hanji, with his own power, that he flew away for a long distance. After landing, his sister and brother approached him. While the young man, standing in the page, thought only that he had terrible control over his power. But then he thought that there are no balls of light lying anywhere on the ground. It turns out that they fall out every time you defeat an enemy. The man was sitting on the ground, holding only a piece of sword in his hand. He didn't understand how this could happen. This is a sword, which the master gave him. Manuli and Dinaru were only interested in the well-being of their mentor brother. Azu stood in front of Funsaya, pointing her finger at him and telling Hanji that she just wanted to warn him that the boy was stronger than her. The man folded his hands in front of him and bowed to the young man. Afterwards, he told him that the younger generation of Baitsenghai did not know about Mount Taishang. He was most interested in where the elder had come from. Kimaru and Funsaya were very surprised by his words. But after some time, above their heads, a huge golden cube appeared. They looked up and the boy didn't know what level he was if he got to that thing. Then God said that his levels of spirituality are not revealed. He is an ordinary person. But this brick possesses a strong power that reaches the Dao Tai realm. And then these three shouted in unison. They couldn't believe that it was King Dao Tai. However, How can this be possible? They never saw it coming. Kimaru was outraged by what he heard. Couldn't understand what they were even talking about. What is the king of the Dao Tai kingdom? Not just any chicken can be king. Funsaya was quick to reassure him, saying that times have changed, a civilization can be created from scratch in 30,000 years, just as it can disappear in an instant. Enraged, Dinara shouted that this liar could not be trusted. Also the fact that he definitely did not reach the Dao Tai realm. Manu Li remembered something. He remembers that this charge of the Dao Tai kingdom was big, and the boy's brick was too small. The sister took out a card with inscriptions and said that now she will allow this fake to show its true face, and threw the card away. The paper flew straight into Funsai's face, but nothing happened. Then he looked at the elder and asked what kind of thing it was. Kimaru said that Shi Hongfu is a luxury for such a person. However, it has little effect on spiritual people above the Dao Tai level. Dinara took out a sword and said that one of them was now bound to Shi Hongfu, so we could use the opportunity to deal with him. Funsaya removed the card from his head and said that he could move. Why they decided the opposite was not clear to him. Everyone was shocked, because if the boy had a level below Dao Tai, then he wouldn't be able to move. This means that he really achieved it. The young man, saying that his mood was beginning to deteriorate, began to release his strength. He did not look well. Only his gaze shifted to Dinaru. He had a feeling that something was wrong with her. Fearing nothing, he rushed at the girl. She, in turn, stood motionless. Funsaya's hand had already reached her face. Only Hanji shouted, she wanted it all to be over as soon as possible. The boy, with a crazy look, asked the girl where she wanted to hide and smiled. A glass wall grew between them, and the girl only smiled. The boy threw his fist into this glass and broke it. Observers were shocked, some even frightened, by what happened. Only Hanji and Kimaru understood what happened. The boy looked at someone embarrassed and confused. He was told that he was very rude and it hurt. Standing in front of him was the very evil Bayuzan named Yang Wuyu. She was only interested in how he was able to find her. Hanji and Manu Li were very angry. They did not believe that their fellow student sister could be an evil Bayuzan. Wiping his nose, Funsaya ordered them to be a little quieter and told the girl that her problems and illusions could fool everyone, but they didn't work on him. He feels her rot inside. Hanji listened to the conversation with his mouth open. He knew that all these evil Bayuzan were devious, but he didn't guess right away. I also did not understand how a young man can feel the rot inside. The girl laughed at his words about her, but slyly looked at the boy. The boy waved his hand near her nose, looking directly into the eyes of the unclean woman, and said that she was very, very rotten. Yang Wuyu looked on, already indignant, while the boy said that it didn't matter if they used different techniques 3 or 5 times, and even if they secretly got the sword Qi or Shi Hongfu, he was ready for anything. Funsaya pointed at her and said sharply that she was ruining everything. He was very unhappy with her actions. The evil Bayuzan suddenly stretched its hand forward, and behind it released its ribbons. They were quite long and pink in color. She wanted to show her true skills. The guy deftly grabbed all the tapes and said it was useless. The girl will not be able to win it. Yang Wuyu picked herself up and flew forward. She didn't say she wanted to win it. Then why did you release the tapes? It is possible to close the review of the guy. The evil spirit rushed to the edge of the cliff. She had nowhere else to run. Funsaya stopped her, but she was only amused. She was advised to surrender. But that was her plan. This hole was the way for her to escape. After saying goodbye, Yang Wuyu jumped into the abyss, asking her to remember her name. Not a trace remained of her. Just a beautiful spiral of red and pink flowers that looked beautiful together. Everyone came to the scene as soon as possible. First of all, the boy was asked why the evil Bayuzhen had escaped. However, he suspected something was wrong. The young man felt that she was somewhere close. His eyes filled with the power of the avatars and he understood something. Funsaya was directed to the tree standing next to him. And when he looked at it, he already knew exactly where the creature was. Having calmed down, he ordered her to leave. His gaze was precisely directed at the tree. And indeed, a girl looked out from behind the tree, licking her hand. She laughed and said that she didn't have enough time and she would definitely cheat on him. Azu was standing next to Funsaya and said that the evil Bayuzhen looks very cool. And he, in turn, noticed that this is the same person who does not like to lose. Azu approached him and asked who he was talking to. The guy lowered his eyes and answered in confusion that he wasn't with her. But when he turned all the way around, he was horrified by what he saw. Behind him were two identical girls. They stood and even spoke in unison. The real Azu was outraged that Yang Wuyu dared to turn into her. One of the girls pounced on the other, thus starting a fight. She said it was a shameless fake. In the air, she kicked the other girl. Then she was filled with magical power and with the words, so that she would receive a blow, hit her. The power of spider silk was activated in two girls. Their hands glowed with a red light, anger overflowing from within. Cobwebs were everywhere. The boy, standing next to Kimaru, was fascinated by what was happening. Hearts were burning in his eyes, but the elder did not like it. Funsaya's nose was bleeding, and the angry god stood there with a handkerchief in his hands, saying that he was just too worried about it. Then, with maddening force, he thrust two fingers into his nose to stop the bleeding. While they were arguing with each other, the true Azu asked Yang Wuyu if she thought she could be tricked into turning into her. In terms of the game, how can it be her? One of the girls recreated the power of web binding, and the web bound them even tighter. The web snapped and Yang Wuyu fled quickly and silently, leaving behind only many beautiful flower petals. Everyone came to their senses and did not know where the evil spirit could have fled. Azu herself blamed herself the most for this. She believed that it was because of her carelessness. Now the girl cannot be found. Standing still and watching everything that was happening, Funsaya heard a voice behind him thanking him. He turned around to see Hanji with Manu Li. The man thanked the boy for helping him open his eyes to their sister. She would become more and more angry and tough. It is not known what could happen next. Manu Li noticed that the elder brother was in critical condition. He asked him to return to the valley. But he is here to find an opportunity to revive the valley. How can you refuse this because of a minor wound? Funsaya coughed, and after that he intervened in their conversation, saying that what he was talking about was just nonsense and had no chance of being realized. He wishes them not to waste their time, but rather to return and heal. The man got very angry after these words. His goal was called a wasteland and it has no chance of reproduction. He took out a sword and put it to his throat and tears were visible in his and Manu Li's eyes. He did not want to believe that this was true and that the heavens wanted to kill his native valley. Looks like this young man doesn't have enough chicken soup for his soul. Funsaya decided to ask him one question. Is there a great treasure in the world? What is the most important treasure of the heavenly valley? Why shouldn't he just sit down and calm down, and let the great treasure at this time restore the valley by himself? He grew angelic wings and a nymph, he rose above the earth, and answered Hanji's question that the most important thing in the valley is man. And then everything became clear to him. God gives the opportunity, not everyone can choose. Fate is determined by God, but everyone has the right to choose. The road of life does not have to be difficult, go ahead and the road will stretch out in front of you. When the way forward is unavailable, learn to turn and tie knots. When you can't solve, learn to forget. When the going gets tough, learn to let go. Destiny is built on the go. His thoughts were intertwined. He was deeply shocked. It was thanks to the old people's notes that the boy was able to help his man to some extent. After a few minutes, he shouted that he understood everything. Funsaya wondered what exactly had become open to him. Hanji replied that the path of spiritual practice is like swimming against the current. The road will continue, but there is no need to stop. But he decided that being in Chienkiu Valley only limited it. When he returns to Shanmen, he will resign as head disciple. The boy did not expect such an answer. The younger brother ran to the older one and began to cry a lot, because he did not want him to leave. But because Hanji understood Funsaya's chicken soup, he really wanted to slap him so that the man would sober up. Suffering Manuli eventually broke down and yelled at his older brother for not understanding what he was doing. After all, the Xuanwu Imperial Palace will look at the Chienkiu Valley with condemnation. If he leaves, what will happen to the valley? Funsaya decided to ask this time, what is wrong with their valley and why should the Imperial Palace be angry with them? It's a long story. So Hanji began the story. The Xuanwu Imperial Palace dominated the world, the source of its power was not far away, in the first holy place of the Chienkiu Valley. Years passed, everyone lived like that. For millennia they kept everyone in awe. But 300 years ago, their head disciple deserted, high-ranking officials suffered heavy losses. Qianqiu Valley instantly fell from the top to the bottom, and the imperial court took advantage of this. He was interrupted by the junior, saying that if he left Qianqiu, the valley would be considered a traitor again, because the head disciple had deserted, just like 300 years ago. He betrays the law of death and devotes himself to service. Their discussion was interrupted by Funsaya, not understanding why the situation had suddenly become so serious. Then I thought about the fact that when you go through such things, you feel pretty bad. No matter what he tried to do, Qianqiu would change sooner or later. If analyzed, they now have three options. Qianqiu Valley, from the beginning, was the best choice until he caused an accident with his chicken soup, and now the elders, under the doors, want to kill him. A trip to the Xuanwu Imperial Palace will inevitably lead to a political struggle, and the tiger companion may even lose his head. This world doesn't seem to stand a chance, so Funsaya is afraid of starving to death. But he is not ready to give up. He needs to calm down because it's like a mission in the game. The Liver Emperor will bring everything to an end. He thought of something, so he walked over to Hanji, put his hand on Hanji's shoulder, and said that he had just arrived here and needed to find a place to stay. The boy looked at the man, his gaze was so warm, as if it were a father's. He suggested going to the Qianqiu Valley for a while to visit the cultivators of that era. Hanji was very moved and did not believe that the young man was really ready to clean things up for him. Funsaya's mercy is unforgettable. If he needs help in the future, the man will go to him in an instant. While they were standing and already discussing the travel plan, Kimaru overheard everything and he also wanted to go with them. At the same time, ancient land. Seal. In the middle of the hall with lightning bolts, sat a man with long and fair hair and his hands raised to the mountain. It was the Lord of the Ashes of the Sea. He covered his head with both hands and shouted angrily that the ancestor was insane. After all, the ancestor not only did not receive the boy's body, but also lost a lot of energy. And now he's going to run away with the others. But there is still a chance. The ancestor took a needle and a doll in his hands and began to poke it. He stopped for a second. A girl came to him and stood in front of him. She greeted like the third generation of the Yang family with the first generation lord. The man already guessed who it could be. The girl folded her hands in front of her and bowed to the elder, greeting him once again. She had fairly long, pink hair and blue eyes. The man saw a little girl in front of him. He asked her if she was really the heir of the Yang family. The long-haired one replied that she was the 41st female of the Yang family, and then added that their family was waiting for the master to return. After that, he softened, because a lot of time has passed, and he is still remembered, and that's good. That girl was Yang Wuyu herself. She told the man that 3,000 years had passed. Would he like to use the secret space to explore it with her? Ancestor thought that the little girl could have fun on the outside, but was still very respectful. He explained to her that this place was a trap where everyone fell. It was not a secret kingdom, but a huge number of seals at his feet. The girl did not understand what kind of seals we were talking about. But God revealed everything. The fact that the thief who sealed him here is extremely cunning. He not only suppressed the ancestor, but also these seals are still visible. No matter how much power the ancestor has accumulated, it will be absorbed by 90%. It's like fighting with yourself. More importantly, his only remaining strength was absorbed by the boy, Funsaya. He won't tell the younger ones about it for anything. At that time, a secret portal appeared in the ancient land, the same one that Hanji and Manu Li arrived at. Everyone stood and looked at him. Funsaya, folding his hands in front of him, told the elder that the girl did not have to accompany him. Azu, getting as close as possible to the boy, said that she is not seeing him off. She is following him to eat. So she will go with him. The young man wanted to know why she wanted to kill him earlier. The answer is quite simple, because he turned her avatar into a barbecue. Exactly. She was going to kill him, but if she did, she wouldn't have anything to eat. She really isn't very smart, the boy thought. The elder patted him on the shoulder and said that monsters respect strength, but they never use brains when needed. He would feel it more strongly when they left the secret space. Yes, he really needs to leave the secret space. Kimaru, all the while, looked at Funsai in disappointment, but there was nothing he could do. The boy, crying, hugged the elder, telling him to wait for him, because he will return to save the mentor. Funsaya, Azu, Hanji, and Manuli were standing by the portal and were already leaving one by one. The boy shouted to Kimaru for the last time that they would definitely see each other again. Before the very entrance to another dimension, the young man felt some attraction. His tag began to glow and burn. He turned around and saw that the beam from the mark was dragging the elder. Nobody understood anything. Kimaru's face was glued to Funsai's. Both felt extremely uncomfortable. Together, in such a magnetic state, they flew through the portal, at the other end of which friends were already waiting for them. What? Kimaru and Funsaya looked into each other's eyes and did not understand how the ancestor was able to get out. At that time inside the seal, the man exclaimed that they had succeeded. Avatar ancestor managed to pass. Yang Wuyu did not understand why he was so happy, because she knew that the ancestor could not leave this place. 3,000 years have passed since he was chained in this hole, but the time has come when his path is finally free. The ban was lifted. The Lord of the Sea will be free today. No one can hold him back. He unleashed all his strength into the unknown circle. However, everything remained as it was. Nothing happened. The bright circle above them did not disappear. But a ball-shaped light began to emerge from the circle, which became larger with every second. They suspected that something was wrong with him. Ancestor managed to warn Yang Wuyu that she would move quickly to the side. And after that, the magic circle released all its accumulated energy and hit the man. All that remained was a pile of thick, white smoke. The girl turned and looked for the elder in this dust. Later, when the smoke cleared, the ancestor appeared. He said that if this thief could catch him here, it was a wonder why he didn't fight him. Yang Wuyu didn't care that he was only mumbling there. His appearance. After being struck by magical lightning, his hair curled and became completely curly. He did not know about this, so he told the girl not to worry, because this technique could not harm him. The ancestor could not understand how it happened that his avatar was able to get out, and he is still trapped. But how does this have to do with Fensai's child? Yang Wuyu put her hand on her chest, bowed her head sadly, and said that she had worked very hard to welcome Ancestor, and in the end, everything turned out like this. He interrupted her by saying that there is no need to be sad. Although the Ancestor cannot leave here, he wanted to give her advice on his practice so that the Yang family's skill would grow. The girl was very pleased because of this attitude towards her and her family. She was very happy, because the Lord of the Seas himself will teach her. Then the man began. He wants to pass on the knowledge of the 3 floating dreams to her. But she will also have a mission. After studying, she has to teach a lesson to Fensai's child. He took out a doll that fully described the boy's appearance. Then he squeezed this doll in his fist and it popped. He needs the girl to give him all his advantages and disadvantages. The next day. Fensai and his people. The starry sky, and in the middle of the earth there is a palace. Fensai, Kimaru, Azu, Hanji and Manuli arrived in the city of Singsha in a carriage with a fiery horse. Hanji spoke about a fellow student sister joining them ever since they arrived in Singsha city. They may have given her a chance to impersonate someone else. Fensai said that since the evil spirit was with them all the time, she was able to communicate with their real sister. So if their sister is still alive, there's a good chance she's hiding somewhere in this city. They continued to drive calmly, talking. The boy needed to know what their sister was really like, what her character was. He did not want them to be deceived again by evil spirits. My brother thought that she could only be praised. She is like a crane, soft and quiet. The sister student has an outstanding talent and a gentle personality. It annoyed Hanji that from the juniors to the seniors, out of the many regular students, there was hardly anyone who didn't like their cute little sister. She always ranked third in the list of most desirable Taoists to marry. They must save her. Someone from outside the carriage shouted that they had found someone. Everyone immediately looked out the window and saw the girl. It was the same sister student of Dinaru. She looked at them angrily and did not understand why they took her, left her alone in Singsha. Hanji and Manuli looked out the window and couldn't believe their eyes. Is this a real sister? Maybe the evil spirit did not take the girl. Azu closed her eyes and turned her head away. She must have suspected something was wrong. This worried the elder and the boy. Afterwards, she angrily shouted that Dinaru's smell was very similar to that of the unclean. Fensai decided that if that was the case, then he should scan her. His eyes lit up with avatars and he looked at her intently. At this time, Kimaru and the girl were thinking the same thing, that the boy had learned a lot from the knowledge of the 3 floating dreams. Will everything be clear at first glance this time? He stared intently at her through his powers, but nothing happened. Through them he saw the same cute girl. Azu wondered if it was a changed evil. But Funsaya removed his hands from his eyes and said that he didn't think it was a disguise this time. The girl smelled her hand and did not understand whether these two actually smelled the same. It seems that Yang Wuyu's accelerated training is already bearing its first fruits. The brothers quickly jumped out of the carriage and asked their sister what she was doing here and whether an evil spirit had attacked her. However, she did not understand anything and said that her mentor brother told her that it was dangerous to do research and that she should stay in the city. She was also very interested in what happened to this evil spirit. Suddenly, Funsaya knocked on the window of the carriage. Hanji turned to see the boy pointing his thumb at the mountain. So, this means that there must be a real sister student of Denaru. The brother put his hands on her shoulders and, looking at her intently, said that he was happy, because everything was fine with her. In this way, he can safely leave Qianqiu Valley and travel freely. Her expression changed dramatically. She was worried and very scared. Does the mentor brother want to go against the clan? And in an instant she fell. Manuli shouted that the little sister had lost consciousness. She is definitely not pretending. We must hurry and give my sister a pill. Azu still thinks she's very strange. He and Funsai will watch her. After some time, Denaru came to her senses. She stood up, holding her hand to her head. At this time, they were all already moving on. But the girl was disturbed by Hanji's words. She asked him again, maybe it was a joke and he wanted to laugh at her. However, such jokes can reach even the master. But it was not a joke. When the man returns to school, he will tell the master everything himself. It was clear from his face that he was serious. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. Therefore, he decided that it would be better to introduce his sister to those whom he met in the ancient land. First, he drew the girl's attention to the elder Funsai, who was sitting on the right. He presented him as a master of Taoism. And on his left, from him, sat Azu, according to him, the senior's companion. There was a very awkward moment between them. But in the middle, something like the elder's battle pet. Kimaru did not like this characteristic of him, because his sea dust is not some kind of thing. Denaru, looking sad and worried, asked if Funsaya really already had a companion. Her brothers did not understand what this question was about now. The boy blushed with shame and waved his hands in different directions. Azu smiled sweetly and asked the young man if her companion could eat. Denaru laughed and was very pleased with this. Her brothers were very shocked by this behavior and tried to somehow calm her down. It seems that this girl is interested in Funsai. Is he ready to be captured by the beauty that the ancestor has prepared for him? The horse and the carriage ran and ran without stopping. The fiery curve shimmered beautifully in the evening light. It was already day. Someone shouted loudly. Yes, so much so that even the birds on the trees shuddered. Qianqiu living room. Hanji stood in the middle of the room with his arms folded in front of him and leaning forward. Behind him stood Funsaya and Azu. Someone pointed a finger at him and shouted that he is a criminal and does not understand what he is talking about. It was Elder Qianqiu, the teacher of Hanji, Leishao. Gloomy grandfather with thick eyebrows. He asked the disciple if he knew it was treason. The man frowned at the teacher, but understood everything perfectly. He does not need explanations, he has already decided everything for himself. Leishao activated his power. His hand glowed with a yellow flame. He was outraged that his master's student wanted to leave the clan. He stood in front of Funsai at a distance and glaring at him said that all this was because of his instigation. The boy did not understand at all what kind of delusion it was. Why does everyone in this world want to pick a fight with him? Grandfather became very angry. His face was scary and stocky. He continued to tell the boy that he had taught his student the word treason. Then he decided that he really needed to entertain the young man as a precious guest. The master folded 2 fingers in front of him and released a Qianchu attack. Thousands of red-hot arcane swords, spring and autumn, were aimed at the boy. But he stood confidently and motionless. He watched the flight of weapons, but none of the swords even touched him. Maybe they surround the body? Hanji, Funsaya, and Azu were standing next to each other, and behind them was a battle of the same swords. Lei Xiao looked at them menacingly and thought that it was truly evil. He didn't know where this Funsaya hit him. But everything turned out to be simpler. Hanji told him that Elder Fun didn't move at all, it was just that the master forgot to put on his mirrors. However, the old man does not like these glass mirrors. He believes that he does not need them. The 6th elder was standing behind him eating a watermelon. Lei Xiao became very angry, his eyes burned with fire, and avatars appeared in them. The master has been practicing with the sword for a long time. His heart is in his eyes. And he doesn't need any bulky things. He directed all his power at the 6th elder, only one hand with a watermelon was visible. But here Hanji asked Lei Xiao to stop, because he is only the 6th elder and Funsai is not there. Then the master carefully shifted his gaze to the man. Azu guessed that this guy was blind, and Funsaya added that he was very nearsighted and half-blind. Later, Lei Xiao approached them and they stared intently at him and waited for his next actions. He, with a menacing expression on his face, pointed his finger at Azu and asked if he was the elder Fun descendant of Lao Shitzu. The guy covered the girl with his hand and asked to call him just Funsaya. He then admitted that some of his actions had an effect, but the master held out a burning hand and ordered the boy to shut up and just admit it. He then released the power, which did nothing to the young man, telling him to visit the old man's sword and say it again. Funsaya told the elder that it was as if the grandfather had called this slap a sword. But there was no answer from the elder. Then, turning around, he saw that the elder was nowhere to be found. Where could he go? Could it defeat him? At the same time, in the corner of the courtyard, Yang Wuyu in the form of Dinaru was sitting upset and crying. An older man stood next to her and told her how worthless she was. He told her to seduce the boy, not reveal his identity. Behind them, Funsaya ran out of the palace, with a huge flame burning behind him. The girl had no choice, because the boy's thoughts were focused only on the spider. The ancestor got tired of hearing this and asked about the matter. Did she bring him the thing she was supposed to find? Yes, the girl found her immediately, as the ancestor ordered. And in Yang Wuyu's hand was an object somewhat like a planet of a very tiny size. It contained a ring for keeping perfume. Soul refinement ring. The Lord of the Sea could not look at her. This ring had a silver setting and a huge blue diamond. In the valley of Qianqiu. In the depths of the Kong Lang Mountains, the battle between the boy and his grandfather continued. Lei Xiao continued to attack the boy with various techniques and his red-hot swords. However, Funsaya has no intention of giving up. He activated his powers and destroyed all the opponent's swords with ease. But the master only laughed at these actions. He saw that at last the boy had gathered courage, but he did not frighten the old man before the thunderbolt. Funsaya smiled and said that it was all because Lei's friend made many moves, but they were all weak. The guy understood everything. Grandfather pretended that he had bad eyesight and led him away from other people to this forest. I wonder what secrets he hides. Lei Xiao folded his hands in front of him and bowed to the boy. He wanted to thank him, although he did not know his goals. His disciple met the evil Bayuzan. If it wasn't for him, they all might have been killed. Fortunately, no one seems to have revealed that Hanji's injury was actually caused by the young man. Later, the master decided to share his experiences with Funsai, so he told that he wanted to take his disciple out of the clan. He hinted many times, but this child pretended not to understand anything. The boy stood surprised and did not understand what kind of situation it was. And all because of the fact that with Hanji's talent, he can go to a better school and get a better education. Grandfather was very worried about this. Funsai became curious as to how the man got to Qianqiu and asked the master about it. Opening the bottle with something, he replied that everything is very simple. When he came down from the mountain, he saw a boy dying of hunger on the side of the road, so the master gave him some buns. Since then, Hanji has been in love with Qianqiu. Funsai reported that Bayuzan has now decided to leave the valley. Lei Xiao thought while drinking something from the bottle that maybe he wants to go to the outside world to save Qianqiu Valley. Then he suddenly began to laugh loudly and say that it was the best and there was no need to return. They have fought for generations and still have not been able to free themselves, perhaps they will never succeed. He will simply stay here and waste his talent in vain. And he continued to drink something. Funsai saw that Lei's friend was so sure about everything and wondered how the future might turn out. Lei Xiao leaned towards the boy and whispered in his ear that when Qianqiu Valley suddenly fell from its peak, who benefited from all this and how would they now allow the valley to be revived? The youth asked if he was talking about the Xuanwu Palace, but the master raised a finger to his mouth, thus indicating silence, for the enemy's eyes and ears were hidden in the valley. Funsai, looking at the master, smiled slyly and asked him about the techniques used by the Xuanwu Palace, because it has a method through which they can easily detect spies. Lei Xiao liked this idea and a determined smile appeared on his face and he asked if he thought that the water in the valley was muddied. The guy's answer was amazing, because Fun and Qianqiu Valley are similar, so he wants to help each other. Funsai hoped that Lei's friend would agree and he would stay with the Qianqiu disciples, maybe even find out the principles of the world spheres. But the master advised them to leave here as soon as possible with Hanji, so that Qianqiu would not be involved in Bai Bai's death. However, the boy really has a way. Lei Xiao then created a huge flaming sword and ordered him to come to Funsai and ask if he had this skill. He swung his sword and attacked the boy. The young man was determined and nothing, if not anyone, scared him. The master hit the place where Funsai was standing, but he quickly and deftly jumped from his place. He thought that it was a really fantastic power. Then he decided to demonstrate his skills and abilities to the old man. He prepared a fist that was filled with power and aimed at the enemy. And then he hit him right in the hand that held the sword, and he flew up to the mountain, turned over 3 times, and fell to the ground behind them. After that, the boy winked at Lei's friend with a smile on his face and, holding his strength, asked him what he was thinking about him now. You could already see how tired he was, but he didn't want to give up. Lei Xiao laughed at him and said that he had terrible physical training. And then he thought that the sea had not lied to him. People in the Taoist world who possess such power take it as a duty. He remembered the words of Master Shu, who had bluntly said that with the current situation in the Qianqiu Valley, it would be really difficult to convince people that a strong Taoist master would suddenly appear. Lei Xiao then activated a completely different power that was not sword-like. You could see the new avatars in his eyes. And then he said to the boy if he really wanted to help Qianqiu, if so, then let the teacher see his true thoughts. A transparent fence appeared around them, giving no way to get out. The master continued to say that the amazing ability of his sword would show the master his heart. And then asked him not to be offended. Fun Sia tilted his head to think. There were some contradictions in his thoughts, because he really wants to help the valley, but he absolutely cannot reveal the specifics of his power. The boy gathered himself and activated the Hunmeng, the initial energy. The lotus avatar appeared above him and he concentrated all this energy. Then blue burning rays were created that easily shattered the glass fence. Fun Sia towered above the ground, spreading his arms to the sides, and the lotus avatar still shone above him. The glass flew in different directions. An old man stood on the ground and watched what was happening. He didn't know about the boy's strength. Lei Xiao knelt down, placing one hand on his chest and bowing to the young man as he completely destroyed his sword. A magical fire burned around them. The same ball of light appeared near Fun Sia, this time it was orange. He went down to her and was very happy to see her. The boy picked it up and saw the avatar icon on it, which brings power. He understood that the sword brought energy. He squeezed the ball in his hand and it popped. The heart sword technique, the spiritual power brought by the heart sword that can reflect the human race, is now possessed by Fun Sia. He told the old man that if his friend Lei had already finished playing, then it was his turn. Now the heart sword avatars were glowing in his eyes. Lei Xiao's mouth was bleeding and he had no idea how it was possible for him to have his power. The guy created a new mirror fence for him, where each mirror had his reflection. Fun Sia asked him not to be surprised because it was only a real heart sword and pointed at it. At the same time, Hanji was standing in Elder Lei's yard, rubbing his chin, and wondering why these two hadn't returned yet. He folded his two hands in front of him, palm to palm, and asked God that Elder Fun would be merciful and the master would not cause trouble. Azu ran up to him and said that she was very hungry. Did they have a canteen in Qianchu? But Hanji thought that it wouldn't work like that, it was completely casual. The girl jumped and shouted that she was hungry, and the man decided to go and check the situation there. He started to walk, until suddenly, someone was standing nearby and started laughing, saying if this isn't the Hanji who failed the clan. It was a green-eyed, fair-haired man, a disciple of the sixth elder, Yi. He did not understand what had happened and whether he was going to meet someone. Hanji noticed him and angrily, without even looking at him, told him to get out of the way. He didn't have time to mess with him. Yi, looking at him, said that he has become too arrogant and is he afraid that after such a long time, the liar has been killed. Hanji turned sharply to him, pointed his fist and asked him not to spread rumors that Elder Fun was a liar. You could see all the anger he had on his face. A serious battle began between him. Hanji attacked Yi and this continued for quite some time. A lot of people crowded around them, watching the fight. Someone was saying that Hanji's brother and Yi's brother had caught up again, someone didn't understand who allowed them to do this, and Azu was running and thinking about where to eat. She didn't know where the dining room was, so she tried to ask people, but everyone was busy with the spectacle. The blonde grabbed the man by his long hair and laughed at the fact that he would not be able to overcome him, as Hanji's strength had greatly increased while he was searching for the treasures. He then showed him his spiritual wheel on his head, which meant that he had reached the realm of the Wheel of Beginning. Spiritual Wheel. The sign of practitioners of the realm of the Wheel of Beginning, which shows that the practitioner has cultivated the 8 spiritual rings. Yi sat on top of the man, thus pinning him down, prepared his fist, and with the words that he would help his teacher get rid of him. Azu kicked him, right in the face. Then she raised all 8 flaming spirit rings and told them to quickly show her where the dining room was. At this time, in the valley of Qianqiu, in the depths of the Canlang Mountains. Fun Sia was standing inside the fence that he had created, and at a short distance from him, Lei Xiao was almost lying. He stretched his hand forward, thus removing the fence, and told the old man that there was nothing wrong with that, he was just experimenting with new spiritual abilities, not quite able to control them yet. The man stood up a little and looked menacingly at the boy and asked, "How did he just learn this?" He also asked how long the young man had been studying the art of the sword. He, scratching his chin, replied that he had just learned this and had never practiced it before. Lei Xiao was horrified and angry because he didn't understand how to understand art without practice. Many generations of Qianchu have trained for thousands of years and only he has mastered this skill. The old man grabbed the boy's face hard and said that there are rumors of an organism called a spirit body, born with a natural outstanding spirit. They pick up magic techniques at a glance and learn in a moment. Isn't that what Fan Sai is referring to? But he smiled intensely and said that he is not as strong as the rumors say and that he cannot learn everything. In fact, he did not expect that there was such a legend in this world, and that he would be able to explain his abilities later. He raised his bent arm up, as if pointing to his biceps, then told the old man that he could also help Qianqi with his talent. Grandfather bowed to the boy and began to cry a lot, because he repeatedly brought friend Fan through himself and his power is very great, and he did not use it because he was afraid of harming him. Now he can trust such a person. Lei Xiao folded his hands in front of him and thanked the young man. Then reminded that Fan offered to find those hiding in the valley. What kind of plan does he have? Instantly, the boy replied that with his abilities, he could first join Qianchu's disciples, and through examination, find out if any of them use techniques outside the valley to understand which of them was undercover. The master was simply delighted with this plan. He was bursting from the inside with happiness. They crossed their arms and the old man told Fan's friend to do a favor and the teacher would help him. The boy, in turn, asked him to trust him. After some time, in the courtyard of the clan head, Fan Sai stood with his mouth open in confusion. It was unexpected for him, because he had only been gone for a while. Azu's footprint on his face and lay motionless. And at that time, the boy thought that this girl really does such things to others. Fan Sai watched as Azu planted her foot fully on his face and, looking down, asked him if he would admit defeat and let him admit it and quickly take her to the dining room before she finished him off. But he raised his hand and said that he never gives up. The boy grabbed Yi and called him a bad man, then punched him with such force that he flew up into the sky and told him to knock him down because he was not even worthy of this girl's feet. Suddenly, a new globe appeared. It fell straight into Fan Sai's hand. He thought it was not bad. He looked closely at it and saw the avatar of a flower there. He had no idea what that meant. Hanji was approaching him, yelling angrily at him and Azu. Here she was very happy that he had finally returned. Fan Sai quickly flicked the ball, thinking that it was not easy to get this attribute, and there was also some kind of flower on it. At this time, the wounded Yi was being carried somewhere by some other people, and he shouted to Fan that he was a liar and that he should not be so arrogant, because people in Qianqiu are not like that. But the people who were near him told him that he was wrong and that he should not be allowed to behave like that in the valley. A man was walking towards Fan Sai, asking to be let in. When he arrived, he stood in front of him and the boy asked who he was. It was Blue, with a fan in hand, being under the leadership of the fifth elder, Mo Yushu. He came to challenge friend Fan. Is the guy ready to talk life and death, or is he ready for battle? From nowhere, Yi appeared behind him. He advised to admit defeat sooner because brother Mo is from an influential family where treasures appear one after another. In battle, most of Qianqiu's disciples are inferior to him. Fan Sai imagined these same treasures after treasures, the same influential family, and gold appeared in his eyes. He was over the moon with happiness. The boy was sure that everything would work out for him this time. So he pointed his finger at this Mo and accepted his challenge. The man folded his hands in front of him and asked Fan Sai to begin. Many people were standing around them and everyone was eager to see it. The boy agreed to start a battle between them. He is already ready and self-confident, he started to accelerate. Hanji was standing nearby and asked Brother Mo to be more careful. He also told him to get all his protective treasures. But he only laughed in his mind and did not understand why he needed to get his protective treasures if he was just the most ordinary swindler. What can he do to him? He took out some kind of ring decorated with wings, and Mo Yushu himself believed that the simple defense of this mirror on the heart would be enough. Then, 3 gold cards with inscriptions appeared in him and he said that it would be difficult for Fan Sai to match him, and then threw them at him. After that, only a giant cloud of smoke and dust appeared in the boy's place. But Mo stood motionless and stared through the dust. Someone from around said that it was finally possible to deal with this swindler and everyone immediately caught this wave of happiness, raising their hands up. But no! At the same moment, Fan Sai slipped out of this cloud and hit the mirror itself so that Mo Yushu flew away and the mirror broke. Now as many as 2 world balls have appeared. One was called Sacred Heart of the Ninth Dragon, and the other, Hidden Dragon Energy. The boy was glad that all the names were related to dragons, because he managed to come across the people of the Xuanwu royal family. Fan Sai quickly crushed the 2 balls. It seems that the situation in Qianqiu is much worse than Mr. Lei said, but the royal family's stake is high. What exactly do they want from this valley? Suddenly, someone asked if the students were rioting again and where their cohesion was. Surprised and frightened, the men turned and saw in front of them. Lei Shao angrily ordered them to stop all this immediately. He also scolded Mo Yushu for putting the guest in a bad light. Yi approached the master with tears in his eyes to complain to him about this Fan causing trouble. However, the master did not want to listen to him. The elder apologized to Fan Sai's friend and said that young people are stubborn. The guy laughed a lot at this, and then said that sometimes you can learn from the younger generation, because this is the same activity that is always useful to stretch your bones. The master decided to introduce the boy to everyone. He brought him up and, pointing to him, said that he is an honored guest and let them show him respect, do not treat him disrespectfully. The boy was pleased to hear such good words, so he smiled sweetly. People did not like this idea very much. They looked at each other, then folded their hands in front of them, bowed and agreed with the elder's decision. Lei Shao put his hand on Fan Sai's shoulder and they walked together. The old man offered to take him to the residence, and the boy was not against it at all. But before he had time to go too far, the young man decided to tell everyone something. If someone wants to come and study with him, please, he will always be happy. Their defeat will depend on the purpose with which they come. Yi and Mo Yushu glared after him and knew that those words were directed at them. Brother Mo was not jokingly angry. He knew that it would not be easy to deal with this guy, so he had to prepare well. Meanwhile, in the guest room of the Qianghua courtyard, the old man was sitting at the table and couldn't believe that the Sacred Heart of the Ninth Dragon, the energy of the Hidden Dragon are really Xuanwu's unique techniques, but how could it be that the child Mo Yushu actually? Fan Sai was sitting nearby, drinking something. The boy asked not to rush to conclusions. Today he intends to provoke him, and he will definitely find helpers to annoy the young man. Fan Sai more and more, because he has crazy plans and he sees and hears everything. The guy said to wait a bit and then destroy them. The young man was lying in the bath and he was very warm and well. He hasn't done any bathing procedures for a long time. Lying down, thinking about the fact that Teacher Lei pretends to be rude, but is really very smart, he also organized a bath for him. Taking a bath is the greatest joy in life. Someone came into the room. Fun thought it was Azu. He wanted to take the opportunity to show off his figure. The reason for Funsai's physical condition is the absorption of worldly attributes. Because of this, he gained muscle mass. The door opened, and Dinaru was standing there. She brought him clothes. He didn't expect to see her right there, behind the door. But suddenly, the girl caught on something and fell into the water. It was a very uncomfortable situation. Dinaru was very close to Funsai's face until a happy Azu ran into the bathroom saying that she was finally back. Her expression changed dramatically, but she only asked the boy if he knew where the oriental crab with lime was, because she was very hungry and wanted to eat it. She has just turned into a humanoid and may not understand what is happening. At the mention of crab with lime, at the same time, Kimaru arrived. He was drooling and had a premonition of this dish. Funsaya was very happy because he saw the elder for the first time in a whole day. He asked him where he was that day because he thought he was beaten by Teacher Lei. But he replied that he was now very hungry and in search of food. And then he coughed and said that people were in no hurry to bring them crab and lime. Dinaru looked at everyone strangely and informed that it was impossible to get crabs right now because the Xuanwu kingdom was in the northwest of the continent and the Wanyao kingdom was by the sea in the southeast. Both kingdoms are bordered by the Canlon Mountains, and Qianqiu Valley is located between the mountains. All areas near the sea are occupied by the Demon Kingdom. The valley of Qianqiu is located in the depths of the country, far from the eastern sea, and it is impossible to get crab. Suddenly, the ancestor began to shout loudly at the girl, because he does not know what kind of demon kingdom this is, he has never heard anything about it before. And she began the story that when all the energy in heaven and earth was exhausted, people could no longer resist the gifted demons, the richest southeastern region was taken from them and the demon kingdom was now established there. Kimura turned around and said indignantly that he didn't expect me to be 3,000 years old and the demons would go after the necks of humanity. The energy has become so low that no one can become a celestial and no one is able to save the ancestor's body. A smiling Funsaya came up to him, put his hand on his head and told him not to lose hope and that even if the world has changed, he should cheer up. And then Dinaru approached the boy wrapped in a towel and asked him to try something on and put a ring on his finger. Then she informed him that this is a soul ring, it can support and warm the soul, the ancestor is now weak in spirit, when he is sick, let him rest in this ring, in the future. What happened during the day while Funsaya was fighting Master Lei? Yang Wuyu in the form of Dinaru and Kimaru were in some bushes and the elder said that this child Fun is very strange. Then he asked that the soul ring be given to him as soon as possible, so that the ancestor could carefully observe him and find out the details as soon as possible. Then, he wondered where the girl that Yang Wuyu was now transformed into had gone, but he hoped that she wasn't her. But she said that maybe the Bayuzan would take over the whole world if they carefully followed the teachings of their ancestors. After that, she smiled sweetly and explained that this world does not have a Ling spirit, and Ling is always her. Kimaru cheered up and laughed. It turns out that it is. For him, it was just beautiful, but Yang Wuyu interrupted him. She asked about the original plan to seduce the boy, and the ancestor gave her a sign to continue with the matter. At that time, Funsaya couldn't even fall in love with this ring that Dinaru gave her. He was very pleased, because this beautiful girl gave him such an amazing thing. The boy changed into the clothes that the girl had brought him. He sat reverently on a wooden chair, looked carefully at the ring presented to him and, like a wealthy count, one of his legs rested on the other. Kimaru approached him from behind. The young man saw him and informed him that this ring looked quite expensive. He thinks that it is not very good that he got it for free. Then the elder answered him that why then did he not return it at once, or did he not consider it a treasure? He smiled shyly and replied that when she gave him the ring, she immediately ran out of the room. And he was wearing his pajamas at the time and running after her would be a bad idea. The elder activated his power and said that if he wanted this thing back, it would now belong to him. And these magical forces began to tear this jewel from the boy's finger. But after thinking for a while, Fansaya realized that it was a soul ring and the ancestor would be able to rest well. And then, not entirely satisfied, he explained to the elder that if he wants to join him, then he must first ask his opinion. Second day, early morning. Azu, clutching her legs at the cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, slept with her head down. A boy dressed in the same clothes was standing next to her, reading something. And someone shouted to tell friend Fun that they wanted to meet him. He approached the girl's head, stroked it and smiled with love and warmth. Then, he opened the door of the room to see who was calling him. And inside I thought, however, that only yesterday I said about it, are there already so many people who want to give him their attributes? But here, he saw not at all what he expected. A dark-haired man 3 times his size stood before him. And the young man immediately asked, "Who is he?" The man smiled, scratching his head, and apologized for the trouble. He introduced himself as Fan Yun, and he came to him to challenge Fan's friend. He hopes that he will follow him to the battlefield. Fansaya looked him straight in the eyes with determination and thought that this guy was much stronger than yesterday's Yi and Mo Yushu. It also seemed that they were not on the same level at all. Maybe something will come of it. Then, he reached out and agreed to accept this powerful challenge for him. Qianqiu Dueling Ground. It was located opposite a rather beautiful and large palace. A number of people have already gathered near the site. And everyone wanted a spectacle. After some time, Fan Yun closed his eyes and folded his hands in front of him, then submitted a duel request with Fan's friend to the disciple Fan Yu. He hoped to get permission. A word rang out from the dark door, where nothing and no one was visible. Thus, disciple Fan Yu allowed the battle to begin. The ground on which the boys were standing began to shake. Fansaya asked why this was happening, but the man, folding his hands, only smiled slyly. The arena rose into the air. It was unclear to the boy why such a big battle was needed for a simple exchange of experience. The people watching them were very happy and fascinated by what was happening. They considered Fan Yun to be a real man. Fansai was already scared to death. He sensed something was wrong. Could this good-natured guy be using some kind of traps? And so, what no one really expected was that a raging fire appeared at the edges of the arena. He was even bigger than that man. Fan Yun smiled gleefully and evilly, slamming his fist against his palm. Then he informed the boy, however, that this site is not for duels. This is an arena of life and death. Then, crouching down a bit and straining, he said that it was this platform of life and death that opened the fair duel mode. The man spread his arms out to the sides and laughed loudly as he warned that the high-level practitioner would be forcibly suppressed to a lower-level opponent. The weapons and tools they use cannot be used either. It turns out that the same applies to Taoist techniques and any spiritual treasures. The field of life and death suppresses and levels everything. Fire began to emanate from the man's hands. He said that if he fought face to face, he would be able to win it, after 6 days of cultivation practice. But Fansaya began to laugh so loudly that tears appeared in his eyes. It was no joke that Fan Yun was angry, because how could he not understand the meaning of honest mode? He stopped laughing. Then, gesturing for the man to start, he said that he understood everything about the fair mode. Yi Yi and Mo Yushu joined the observers. In Mo's hands was some kind of ring that served as a projector and showed a close-up of the battle between the men. Yi Yi then said that this wonderful treasure had just revealed to them Brother Mo's secretive spying habit. Duel. Fansaya asked the man if he had any skills to use them all. But this made Fan Yun very angry, so he simply replied that the boy was acting smart before his death. But he was telling the truth. The enemy's hands became like red-hot stones from which fire emanated. The man crossed his arms in front of him, smiled, and told the boy that this was the last thing he would ever see in his life, and to shut up and enjoy the strongest form of his efforts. At the same time as Fan Yun tensed all his muscles and began to shout loudly, he was like an angry bull that was also roaring with anger. His reception can fight, even, with the first level of Celestials, just as invincible. Looking at the boy, he decided to give advice. His words were that he would improve and practice in the next life. The man rushed, swinging his flaming fists, but when he saw that Fansaya didn't even move, when he reached him, his strength began to fade. And in the end, when it came down to it, it was just a touch to the guy's chest. The young man touched his fist with a finger and asked if the man had breakfast in the morning, then asked him to give it at least a little strength. Yi Yi, Mo Yushu, and everyone who stood by and watched the events were simply shocked that the boy remained unharmed. Fan Yun smiled widely and every cell in his face trembled. He couldn't understand how it was possible that as soon as he reached it, his gloves disappeared along with his power. Now it looked as if Fansaya was 10 times the size of the man. With a trembling voice, Fan Yun asked the boy about which realm he had ascended to. The boy smiled sweetly and guessed that in a few months, most likely, he would be able to open the first step to the realm of the beginning wheel. The man was in a misunderstanding. He was filled with fear because he couldn't even imagine what it would be like just a few months before the realm of the beginning wheel. That's how strong Fansaya is. Then, clenching his hands into fists, the boy asked his friend Fan if he would continue to fight. Smiling ominously and frowning, the young man looked at his opponent and warned him that now it was his turn. Frightened, Fan Yun began to beg for his life to be spared, apologizing and saying that it was a mistake. Tai Shan. Fansaya spoke the magic words and with all his strength, hit the man's face precisely. The observers shouted in unison. They were shocked by the boy's power and kicking technique. He managed to overcome Fan Yun. And again he was lucky, because he received a second double yoke. 2 world balls descended to him. The first is called the fist method, and the second is called the art of the blade. And then he understood something. He seems to have found a pattern in getting attributes. Attribute drops can be divided into 2 categories. First, talents dropped at the very beginning, such as essence of vigor, poison speed, and the like, are in-game attributes. Second, skills such as 3 floating dreams, sacred heart, are similar to techniques that must be mastered within the game. Fansaya remembered all his opponents. How all light attributes fall out. The first depends on the skills the target has. The second is related to his success. But it is also related to the strength of the target. The weaker the target, the less likely the attribute will drop, otherwise the probability is high. However, wouldn't Hanji, who doesn't see these things, worry about his strength? Besides, there is a stronger person who wants to challenge the young man, isn't that right? Yi Yi ran to the room of the 6th elder in a panic, quickly opening the door. He wanted to inform the master that this Fansaya was very unusual and apparently his level was lower than theirs, but he was able to defeat the elder Fan Yun. But he, sipping something, asked the boy in a calm voice about where Lei Xiao and Hanji got such a bastard. Yi replied that he had heard that it seemed to come from a secret space, meaning the origin was unknown. The sixth elder of Qianchu, Lu Chuanyuan, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief and said that this person is indeed a changeable factor. And then he added that such a dangerous creature should not remain. Half an hour later, after the battle with Fan Yun, a sufficient number of various students from all over had gathered in front of the dining hall. Fansaya and Azu were standing next to him, and he looked at her and told her that even though Master Lei allowed them to eat whatever they wanted, but the girl took all the baskets with food. Grabbing his head and opening his mouth, the boy was simply shocked by what he saw, and not only him. But despite all this, the main thing is that Azu is happy. While the girl behind was rejoicing, someone visited the young man. This man, judging by his appearance, guessed that it was Fansaya. But then he thought that this boy had a familiar aura. It was the sixth elder of Qianchu, Lu Chuanyuan. He would like to invite the young man to Guzhong Wanyue. But the young man, using his lotus abilities, realized something. So he told the man that he had a familiar aura, and it turns out he also practices the heart sword. Using his power, the sixth elder asked Fansai with his eyes how he knew that he was practicing heart sword. The boy's answer was simple, because he has his own methods. He approached Lu Chuanyuan, put his hand on Lu Chuanyuan's shoulder, and said that he had heard that he and Master Lei had a difficult relationship when they were young. He once met a girl named Mu Yuan, and he had a breakdown. Although he is calm about such things, but the master is ahead of everyone in his epoch, a good player, Elder Lu. Hearing this, Lu Chuanyuan became very angry. He said that there is no Yuan girl. He hopes that Fansaya clearly understands where the rumors are and will not believe them. Yes, do not believe the rumors. The boy asked if they were going to the Manhwa pavilion, and then he gathered himself and left. Azu was also walking with them, also carrying all the baskets with food in her hands. So they reached the Manhwa pavilion. The three stood and looked at the grandeur and beauty of the building. It was too dark to drink tea there. The boy and the girl did not like what was happening. But Azu calmly walked and made pies. But Elder Lu just snapped his fingers, when suddenly a small light appeared, it is not clear from where. Red circles with patterns appeared. This light came from them. In the middle of it all, stood Lu Chuanyuan, telling a story. This pavilion was built by hand using extremely durable materials. It was painted by ancient masters to kill people of higher levels. There were many of these magic circles, and each of them had its own unique pattern. Even the rude Lei had never entered Wanhua pavilion so easily, but the boy dared. The boy laughed and said that it was all because Elder Lei had once told him that a person practicing the heart sword could not be bad. The master said that the stubborn fool Lei had always been a simpleton, and the young man believed him. The elder confidently activated the power of the sword of spring and autumn, and it appeared in his hands, with burning rays. Then, he pointed that sword at the boy and said something about a rain breath attack. And thousands of arrows coming out of these painted circles headed straight for the girl and the boy. If you have watched up to this point, then I am very grateful to you, because this is where the video ends. If it's not difficult for you, then like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to continue this story, then write in the comments. Thank you all, I love you all.